In this, our 14th lecture, we continue our exploration of the life lessons that we learned from the great books and our exploration of the theme of love, that most powerful of human emotions, which along with religion and the love of freedom, I believe, has been responsible for the noblest deeds in history and also perhaps some of the most evil and devastating, love. Last time we explored it in the Alcestis of Euripides. And that play is all about one important aspect of love, perhaps the noblest, the idea of sacrifice, that you will lay down your life for the one that you love. No love is greater than to lay down your life for another. And that is what Alcestis was willing to do for her husband, to save him from death, and in return was actually saved by the hero Hercules. Euripides continued with this theme of love. He explored it again and again and again in a way that Sophocles and Aeschylus, the other two great Athenian writers of tragedy, never did. And in 431, 7 years after he had produced the magnificent Alcestis, he explored it in his tragedy, the Medea, one of the most gripping of all of the Greek tragedies. Now, every tragedy performed there in Athens worked on a variety of levels. It was meant to interact with the audience on a variety of levels. There was the religious depth that is explored in Alcestis, and the idea of the vicarious sacrifice who brings wisdom to humans. And then there is the moral aspect, the idea that we learn lessons of morality closely linked to the will of the gods from a tragedy. And then every play also has political implications. For the Athenians, there are moral consequences to every political action. And although these plays are generally set in the distant mythological past, the age of the Trojan War, or the heroes who came even before the Trojan War, every one of them is meant to reflect upon a political situation of the moment. And the Athenian democracy, this first government based upon the ideal of the greatest good for the greatest number of citizens, was the first to believe that ordinary people can govern themselves in government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And the democracy of Athens shares our values. In his funeral oration, Pericles said of Athens in 431, so the very year in which the Medea was put on, "We are a free and open society. We are democracy based upon," and this is what he says, "government of the people, by the people, and for the people. We believe in living a tolerant lifestyle. We don't care what lifestyle you choose as long as you harm no one else. We will not be angry with you. We will not even give you sour looks, which might hurt your feelings. But we do believe that you should be involved in politics. And we think a man who is not engaged in politics is not minding his own business, but has no business here at all. We believe in a free market economy. We do not deny ourselves the good things of life. We surround ourselves with the goods that come in from the entire world. We love wisdom and beauty without it making us soft. And we are patriotic. And when the moment comes, we are as true in the line of battle, as brave, as warlike, as our enemies the Spartans, who deny themselves all pleasures. And part of this surrounding of yourself with beauty were these performances of the tragedies. However, even though they share our values in these very important ways, the Athenians were also very different from us. The Athenian democracy rested upon slavery. There was no dichotomy between liberty and slavery. It rested upon an empire, and it rested upon the denial of political rights to women. Women were what used to be called passive citizens. They had the protection of Athenian laws, Athenian women did, but they could not participate in politics. Now, before we're too hard on the Athenians, we need to remember that another great democracy came into being in 1787 with our Constitution, in which women did not vote and in which slavery existed. But nonetheless, today we see this as a great flaw in the Athenian democracy. It's also very important in terms of understanding the tragedies, because since attending these tragic performances was the duty of a citizen, women were not allowed to come. There are no women in the audiences. It is an entirely male audience. But the freedom of Athens unleashed a great burst of creativity. In fact, it might be said that the Athenian democracy ranks along with our own day as one of the two most creative periods in all of history, intellectual creativity. Why do you suppose? In our own day, more people are free than at any other time in history. And this freedom has unleashed a huge burst of creative energy, as it did in ancient Athens. But their creative energy went into the arts. It was an age in which these buildings on the Acropolis, like the Parthenon, were erected that still arouse our admiration today. It was a time when sculpture was developed, the statues of Polykleitos that would forever define the very ideal of the classical. It was when the very notion of the liberal arts education was developed as an education suited for a free citizen. It was when medicine was first studied as a scientific discipline. It was when the first histories, as a true attempt to understand the present in terms of the past, were written by Herodotus and Thucydides. And part of this intellectual creativity were the dramatic performances. But along with this burst of creativity came a questioning of all values. And if man was the measure of all things, then what about the gods themselves? What about religion and morality? And there to question the values of all aspects of Athenian life and beliefs were the first group of professional educators, the sophists they were called. The very word means a wise man, and the best translation are professors. Many of them were not Athenian citizens. Now, everyone who wrote tragedy was an Athenian citizen there in Athens. But these professors, these sophists, came from all over the Greek world, from Sicily, from the Black Sea area, men like Protagoras, who said that man is the measure of all things. That is to say, we can judge only on the basis of our human reason. The gods may exist, but we don't know. And at any rate, we cannot count upon the gods to influence human actions. Pericles himself had been educated by a sophist, and in his funeral oration, Pericles nowhere invokes the gods. It is all the achievement of the Athenians, and his belief was we can solve all things through reason. So all moral values were questioned. There was a famous story that went about. You would have told your father when you came home on spring break after studying with one of these sophists. And you know, to study under one of these sophists cost as much as it would be to send your son or daughter to Harvard today. It cost in real currency of today about $44,000 a year. So it was a serious expense you were laying out for that son, in that case, not a daughter. But the idea was the sophist would teach your son to play an important role in politics, and politics was all important at Athens. And the key to a political life at Athens and reaching the heights of political ambition was to be able to speak well. And that is what a sophist taught your son, was how to speak well and persuade an audience of free men to do what that person wanted them to do. Now, trouble is, a sophist also believed that in order to sway an audience, you had to be able to present a false argument just as beautifully as you did a good argument, a true argument. So the first step in teaching your son how to be a successful politician was to teach him to lie, and to lie very, very successfully, and to put forth a bad argument, a treacherous argument, but one that you wanted to win with, in as smooth a way as possible. And there were, the sophist told your son, no such thing as eternal values. There was no such thing as a value that was right in all places and in all times. Everything was just a matter of the situation. So your son there on spring break comes back home and says, "Dad, did you know that there is no such thing as absolute morality?" "Well, I don't believe that." "How did you get that idea?" "I got it from a teacher." "Let me ask you a question, Dad. Do you believe that cannibalism is always wrong?" "Well, absolutely. Cannibalism is wrong in all places and in all times." "Do you believe that?" "Well, Dad, let me ask you this. Have you ever heard of the famous king of Persia?" Which famous king of Persia?" "Well, he invited a group of Greeks to his court, and he asked the Greeks, how much would you take to hit your grandfather in the head, cook him up, and eat him? Well, I know a amount would make us do that. Well, then he invited a group of Indians from India to his court, and he said, how much will you take to not knock your grandfather in the head, cook him up, and eat him? They were appalled, because to them, you see, when your grandfather gets old, the best tribute you can pay to him is knock him in the head, cook him up, and eat him. So you see, Dad, nothing is valid in all places and in all times. So this questioning of all values also led to the question about the freedom of women. And Plato tells us how the Athenian democracy progressed so far in its democratic ideals and its definition of liberty as equality that many began to say, well, women are just as capable as men. Women should have full political rights. So Euripides ponders this in his play, the Medea. It is set again in the mythological past. And as I have told you, that is in order to show that these questions are eternal. They echo through all places and in all times these very issues of, is there a difference between men and women? And should women be kept in close control by their men? Which was certainly what happened in Athens. The domination of women by men was absolute, at home as well as in the political life. Medea. The story is set in the city of Corinth, and Jason, the hero of the Argonaut, is there with his wife Medea. And the audience has a certain background understanding of this Jason and Medea and how they got there. Jason was one of those heroes who lived before the age of the Trojan War. And his father had been overthrown and his evil uncle set upon the throne of the little town of Iolcus in Thessaly, in the kingdom of Iolcus. And Jason came back home. He had been raised far away. He had come back home and was determined to take back his throne. And his uncle met him with open arms and said, I don't deny you your throne at all. I think you should take it back. However, I've been king for so long and the citizens are so used to me that I think you ought to do something to show them you're worthy of being a king. Well, what is it you want me to do? Did you ever hear of the golden fleece? Only vaguely. Well, do you know that was a ram that once saved the life of one of your ancestors? He was going to be offered up in sacrifice along with his sister. This ram, this beautiful golden ram, was sent down by the gods and carried him off. And they went far out to where the Black Sea comes to an end, in the misty land of Colchis. And there the ram was offered up in sacrifice, and there it still rests, in a tree, I am told, guarded by a serpent. Now that would be the kind of glorious achievement that you could accomplish, come back, and all the citizens would say, let Jason be king over us, and then I, Peleus, will happily step down. Well, Jason loved this kind of adventure. After all, it was an age of heroes. So he sent out a message all through Greece. Let anyone who wants to be a hero come with me. And they came from all over Greece. And the great ship Argo was built. And these Argonauts, these sailors on the Argo, sailed off for the Black Sea, for the area which we would call Georgia today, which was known by the Greeks, a land indeed rich in gold, and a land where wine was first invented. In fact, the word for wine, oinos in Greek, and hence from other languages like Venus, vino in Italian and Latin, it originally goes back to a Georgian word. So apparently it was there that the wine, the grape, was first fermented into that glorious beverage. But they set sail out there, but it's an adventure, and they've got to pass through all kinds of challenges and tests, the tests of heroes. And they begin by coming to the island of Limnos, dangerous place. There are no men on that island because the men had refused to sleep with the women long ago. The women had smelled so bad. They'd been cursed by the gods with a terrible smell. So out of revenge, the women rose up and killed all their husbands. But they welcomed the Argonauts with open arms. The Argonauts feast and make love there, and then they sail off. They come to the land of the Harpies, where there's this poor old man, Phineas, who had been gifted with the sight of looking into the future. And Zeus got angry at him. The gods give you this gift of seeing into the future, then they get mad when you use it. So Zeus had punished him, not for anything he had done, except making use of the gift of the gods. It's one of the curious mysteries about the gods that we ponder. Why do they let evil occur and even cause evil? And these terrible birds, the harpies, would swoop down on poor Phineas. And every time he got ready to eat, they would swoop down and poop all over his food. And so he just turned into a wasting skeleton. The Argonauts come, and the north winds blow and catch up these terrible women birds in the swoop of the air, and the Argonauts kill them all. So Phineas can eat again, and they feast with him. And then he gives them the warning. Most dangerous place you are coming to is the clashing rocks, and they will crash together and crush the Argo. So what you want to do is send a dove through. And if that dove makes it through, then you go after it as fast as you can and before the rocks crash back together. So they send their dove through, and it gets through. A couple of its little tail feathers are crushed, but then the rocks open back up, and the Argo races through, is oared through, and they make it, and they finally arrive at Colchis. But it is not going to be an easy job. The king of Colchis, Euripides, hates foreigners. He loves his golden fleece. He does not want it taken away, but he realizes that this is a mighty band of warriors, so he better tread carefully. So he welcomes Jason and says, I will give you the golden fleece, but you've got to prove yourself worthy. Now, I proved myself worthy. There were these two huge bulls who came raging up out of the ground, fierce, metallic-like, and I harnessed them. Then I plowed the ground, and I threw in seeds, out of which came armed men that I had to conquer. You try and do the same thing, you, Jason. And if you can, I'll let you have the golden fleece. Well, it sounds like a difficult task. But first, let's feast tonight. It is then that the gods intervene to help Jason. And Jason goes to the feast. The gods have decided that he should bring back this golden fleece. So Aphrodite sends down her little boy Cupid, and he fires an arrow into the daughter of King Euripides, the beautiful Medea, a woman gifted with witchcraft and sorcery. And she is struck like a thunderbolt with love for the handsome Jason. And she comes to him that night after the feast and promises him that she will help him. First of all, she gives him the advice about how to yoke these great beasts. And then she says, when the iron men jump up, these bronze warriors jump up after you've sown the ground and seeded it, they'll jump up. If there are too many of them for you, throw a giant boulder into their midst, and they will start fighting over that boulder, and you can kill them all. So I'll give you the potions to enable you to charm the great oxen, the great bulls, plow up the ground, overcome the iron bronze men, and then you will have to have the golden fleece. Well, Jason doesn't, and it all turns out just the way she says. But her father reneges. He says, no, I'm not giving you a golden fleece. I'm keeping it. So Medea comes to him now and says, for you, for the love that I bear you, Jason, I'll betray even my own father. But you've got to take me away with you. I want to live forever and be your wife. And Jason says, absolutely. So they go to the tree where the golden fleece hangs. And she, with the beauty of her song and her love potions, sings the serpent that guards it to sleep. And they steal the golden fleece. But the father finds out, and he comes after them at top speed. And the Argo is rowing as hard as it can. The father with his navy is chasing them. But Medea has one final trick. She has coaxed her brother to come on the Argo. And then, as they're almost captured by her father, she cuts, Medea does, her own brother up into pieces and throws them out into the sea to distract her father, who keeps trying to pick up the pieces of his son floating. And they make their way back to Greece. And they go to Iolcus, where Jason wants to take back up his kingship with the golden fleece. And Peleus says, well, you know, I don't know if I should turn it over until I die. I thought the agreement was you got to be king after I'm dead. Well, Medea can't wait. So she goes to the daughters of Peleus, and she says, do you love your dad? My husband's uncle. Yes, we love him a whole lot. Would you like him to just live forever? Yes, and could he be young again too? Of course. I am a sorcerer. I don't want my husband, Jason, to take on all these duties of being a king. So what you do, watch. See this old sheep here? Yes. Watch, says Medea. I cut him up into pieces. I boil him up, put this potion in, and look, and a little lamb jumped out. So, cut your dad up, throw him in a pot, start boiling him, then we'll pour the potion in, and he'll be young forever. So they chop him up, throw him in the pot, start boiling him, but she didn't throw any potion in. So they just cooked Dad to no purpose. However, this has led to a sort of backlash against Jason and Medea there in the kingdom of Iolcus, so they have to leave, and they go to Corinth. And that is where we find them. Well, Jason has taken care of Medea. They've had some children. He's given her a good life over the years since they have come to Corinth. But he now has an opportunity, a career move. And that is the king of Corinth, who is named Creon, asked if Jason will wed his daughter, Glauce. And Jason says, I'd love to marry your daughter. And Medea, at the start of our play, has just heard about this. Well, she is, an Athenian would have said, unduly outraged over this. And she is ranting. Jason will not get away with this. This woman will not get away with taking my husband from me. This whole kingdom of Corinth will not get away with taking my husband. I will take vengeance upon them. And Jason comes to her and says, you have got to stop this anger. Let me explain to you. I am doing you a favor. By this career move, marrying Glauce, the daughter of the king, we'll be safe here. Our children will have a fine education. We will cease to be foreigners, and we'll enjoy all the protection of the king. Well, she doesn't stop her ranting until finally the king comes and says, you are far too dangerous, Medea. I banish you from my kingdom, and I banish your children from my kingdom. You are to go, and do not let the sun rise tomorrow on your head, or I will kill you and your children. Well, the guardian of the children, the pedagogue as he is called, their teacher and guardian, points out to Medea and also to the old nurse, you know, nobody is his neighbor's own best friend. Everyone looks out for themselves. And that is all Jason is doing. He is looking out for himself. And these old ties simply don't bind him anymore. So the best thing for you, Medea, is just to move on. Put the past behind you. Well, she can't do that, of course. She's outraged by this. Jason comes to her again, and he tries to explain one more time. And here we see the language of the sophist that Euripides has worked into his play. And indeed, Euripides was the most sophistic of all the writers of tragedy. And Jason points out, step one, I did you a big favor by bringing you here. What do you mean? You were living in a barbarian land, Colchis. What a terrible place for anybody to live. I have brought you to Greece, where you have liberty under law, where you have civilization, where your children can be raised in a civilized fashion. Now that's a favor I have done to you. But I loved you, and my love enabled you to gain all those triumphs. Well now, you know, that really wasn't true. Aphrodite and Cupid, they're the reasons I was so successful. Aphrodite had you shot through the heart with the love arrow Cupid. So you fell in love with me, but your love really didn't play much of a role. It was given by the gods. So I don't think you should hold that over me. Thirdly, this is a lot better. I have tried to explain this to you before. Our children will be safe. You will be safe. The main trouble is that you're being banished. And if you hadn't been so excessive in your anger, if you hadn't made all of these threats, Medea, then you wouldn't even be banished. So what we're going to do is as follows. You're going to leave the country. I'm going to marry the king's daughter. I will talk to him again and again, and sooner or later you and the children can come back. I will not come back and be a concubine to you when you have married. Well, that's your choice. If you don't want to, that's fine, but you still can come back and bring the children. I mean, it's over. Just face it, Medea, it's over between you and me. All right. Well, she seems to calm down, and she turns to Jason and says, how persuasive you are, darling. I understand now why you win so many hearts. And you're right. Why, what a wonderful thing you did bringing me to Greece. What a wonderful thing you did by letting me fall in love with you and letting me help you with all these adventures. And of course, I can see it's good that we're banished for a while. Do you really mean that, Medea? Yes, I do, darling. And to show you how much I mean it, I've got a little present for your wife-to-be, for the princess. Really? I don't think you have to give her anything. No, no, no. I have a magnificent crown. and a beautiful golden dress to give her. Oh, well, she's got lots of crowns and dresses. She's a princess. I know, but it would just mean so much to me if you would take it. Well, I will. I'll take it and give it to her right now. And I think this will do a lot to bridging the gap, and maybe you won't even have to be banished. Oh, I don't think your children will ever be banished. Really? No, no, no. I think they will stay here. Stay here indeed. Why? Well, this is a wonderful change of heart you've had, Medea. So Jason goes off, taking with him this crown and this golden dress, and gives them to his bride-to-be, and she's just delighted. She just cannot wait to put them on. So she places the crown on her head, she places the golden dress on, but she begins to feel a little funny. For this is the same poison that Medea has used again and again, and it is like a fire. And the girl begins to feel that her very head is burning and her body is burning. And then flames literally burst out of her as she is caught on fire by this terrible poison. And her father, Creon, watching this, tries to save her and tries to grab her and put out the flames. And he himself is caught on fire. He tries to roll her in a blanket. And the two of them literally melt there, father and daughter, due to the poison of Medea. And Jason rushes back to the house of Medea, demanding to know why she has done this. But in the meantime, she has brought her children to her children by Jason. How could I ever allow you little children to stay here? Stay here in this land of hatred. Oh, you're dear to me, dear indeed, but my vengeance is dearer still. I would be doing you a favor to take you out of this evil world, not to leave you with a father so treacherous. Come to me, my little ones. Kiss me one more time. Mom, what are you thinking of doing? Just kiss me one more time. It'll all be for the best. And then with her own hand, despite their pleas, Medea slays her own children. She has laid the ground well. King Aegeus has come from far off Athens. He's been in search of finding out how a oracle, what it means. And she has explained it to him, but she has explained it only by saying, if I ever need you, will you let me come to Athens? And so now she has killed her own sons. And when Jason arrives, he demands to know, how? I understand why you burnt my fiancé up, but how could you kill my children? How could you kill the ones we love? And she said, vengeance. Vengeance. You brought this all upon me. And now no one will ever say that Jason is happy again. And she has climbed into a chariot driven by 2 dragons. And she roars off the rooftop of the palace, off to Athens, leaving behind the ruin of Jason. He will never even recover. Not only will he never be king, in fact, he will go back and try to take a nap under the old ship Argo, where he once had such happiness and glory, and it fell and crushed him under it. So he perished. Now this woman, Medea, presented to an entire male audience. Frequently we hear that the dramatists like Aeschylus with his Clytemnestra are trying to show how strong women are and speaking out for women's rights. That's not what Euripides is doing here. He is explaining to his Athenian audience how dangerous women are. And once they are allowed outside of their accustomed boundaries of utter subordination, they bring havoc and destruction. This is not just the view of Euripides. Pericles, the statesman, the most thoughtful of all Athenian political leaders, at the end of his funeral oration concludes it by saying, after having praised Athens and the Athenian men, I guess I'd better say something about women. Well, remember this, try not to be worse than you already are, and remember that woman is best of whom the least is said. And Socrates, about to meet his death, has dismissed his wife from the room, but his students are there and they are weeping and crying. And Socrates says what is a standard Athenian proverb, you are worse than women. That's why I sent my wife away, and here you are weaker even than a woman. So we read these plays, They speak across the ages to us, but in interpreting them, we must be aware of reading our own values into these plays of a very different kind of democracy.